This is the most horrific prison in Russia, where not a single prisoner has left alive in nearly 300 years. The prison houses ogres, murderers, psychopaths, Chechen terrorists and more, with a total of 700 inmates who have killed 3,500 people. That's an average of 5 lives per capita. Black Dolphin Prison has terrorized inmates, and for the first time in its history, it has opened its doors to international film crews. Black Dolphin Prison, located on the border between Russia and Kazakhstan, was founded in 1745 and is now known as Russian Federal Prison No. 6, also known as Black Dolphin Prison, named after the statue of a black dolphin erected at the entrance. Of course, the prisoners can't see this dolphin because they are blindfolded when entering the prison. The prison has the highest level of isolation for these inmates, and the entire cell is airtight, with 3 large metal doors in a room barely 4 square meters, which feels like a cell within a cell, with 3 locks on each door, making it appear especially secure. Each cell is about 4 square meters and houses 2 prisoners who spend their days in this small space. Russians are tall, but their beds are only 1 meter wide and have no mattresses. Prisoners must get up at 6 a.m., and for the next 6 hours, they cannot lie down on the bed. The room is equipped with motion detectors for lights and shadows, and all their movements are monitored. Prison guards check their rooms every 15 minutes. With such a strict regime, there is no chance for prisoners to escape. Some even say that such a system is not too strict. In fact, just looking at the information about the crime on the cell door is enough not to feel any pity for them. The prison director said the following about these prisoners. This prisoner, for example, raped 44 people and killed 5 of them. And the man in front was a drunken murderer who killed 6 of his friends while he was drunk. The prisoner in the next cell had killed 11 people. Other terrorists are also imprisoned here, such as the man who planned the Moscow bombings, killing 64 people instantly. However, the most perverse prisoner was the ogre Nikolaev, whose deeds shocked the world at that time. Before killing people, he was about to drag their bodies to the bathroom to dismember them, and it was at that moment that he suddenly had a strange idea. So he cut the meat and cooked it, but it didn't taste good. So he fried it again, like a steak. The sickest thing about Nikolaev was that, considering it was too much for one person to eat alone, he also sent some to his friends, lying and saying it was kangaroo meat. It is truly impossible to describe the extent of his perversion when you observe the way he laughs while speaking. Against these vicious criminals, Black Dolphin Prison can only be more vicious. They are locked in a 4 square meter cell for the rest of their lives, and it's usually difficult to find someone to talk to. This lonely, isolated life is absolutely suffocating. In other prisons, inmates can go to the cafeteria to eat and interact with other prisoners. At Black Dolphin, there is no cafeteria, and prisoners eat in their own cells for security reasons. The cook places the food on a shovel and carefully passes it into the cell, as if it were some kind of wild animal kept there, and their daily meal consists of bread, soup, and potatoes. If a prisoner wants to leave their cell, they must stand with their hands on their head, walk with their body bent at a 90-degree angle, and press their head against the wall when leaving the cell, while the guards search them. After the search, the guards blindfold them. The reason for the blindfolds is to prevent the prisoners from knowing the layout of the prison, so if there is ever a riot in the prison, the inmates won't know where to flee. Prisoners have 1 hour of freedom a day, but that means they are escorted to another, larger outdoor cell, which is covered by bars and has guards patrolling above. But in reality, they don't even see the sky, and the prisoners can do nothing but walk back and forth. When prisoners are released, the guards take the opportunity to search the rooms for contraband or signs of escape attempts. The guards return and carefully check if the bars are loose, if anything is hidden in the books, and they also check the floors, ceilings, electrical wiring, lights, etc. No corner is left untouched. In addition, guards patrol the prison 24 hours a day to prevent prisoners from escaping. The prison is also home to the Caucasian Shepherd dog, the largest dog breed in the world, with a height of almost 2 meters and a weight of up to 90 kilo. Once used as a military dog by the Soviet Army, the Caucasian Shepherd was known for attacking the enemy's carotid artery, and there was little chance of survival if a dog of this breed bit you. In the 300 years of Black Dolphin Prison's history, no prisoner has managed to escape. With no hope and locked up like animals, some have broken down shortly after entering. One prisoner said the following about how to cope. "If you keep thinking that you will never get out for the rest of your life, you will probably go crazy before you get old." The mayor said that Black Dolphin Prison was the end of the road for inmates, that there was no harsher prison, and that technically there was only one way out of it. Every second is torture in these conditions, and both the prison and the victims' families agree that life imprisonment is more cruel than the death penalty, which is the true punishment. Regarding the prison, there have been reports of inmates being mistreated, but none of those interviewed have complained, presumably because the guards are nearby and no prisoner dares to say too much. It seems this Russian prison is far more brutal than we've seen. It's a prison from which no one has ever successfully escaped. The prisoners are locked in iron cages like beasts. Each meal must be carefully fed by the prison guards. Once a prisoner is locked up, it is impossible to get out again. From imprisonment to death, the prison offers the full service, contracting the entire life of the prisoner. This is Fire Island Prison, which makes criminals fear it. Fire Island Prison is the oldest prison in Russia, located on an isolated island north of Moscow. The entire island is surrounded by swamps and lakes, and the only exit to the outside world is a wooden bridge with many checkpoints. The temperature here can reach 40 degrees in the summer, and mosquitoes are everywhere. In the winter, the temperature drops to 30 degrees, and the island is covered in snow and ice. Although living conditions are worse, prisoners don't even dare to think about escaping from the prison, because this prison is completely isolated. No one can escape successfully. There are cameras everywhere. The walls are 6 meters high and covered with barbed wire. Prison guards and police dogs patrol 24 hours a day. The only exit is the wooden bridge, but the bridge is covered by sniper fire, and even if a prisoner managed to escape from the cell, in the end, they would be easily killed. In this high-security prison, more than 200 cruel prisoners are incarcerated, including terrorists, murderers, mobsters, serial killers, etc. Since the death penalty was abolished in Russia in the 1990s, these prisoners are sentenced to life imprisonment, which means they can only die of old age in this prison. Prison officials believe that life imprisonment is an even harsher punishment than the death penalty because inmates have to face their crimes at all times until they die. If the death penalty is carried out directly, it is a release for them. Isolation is the main means of punishment in the prison. Each inmate is locked in a small cell, and watching TV or reading books is prohibited. All the cell's facilities are fixed to the floor, such as beds or tables, in case they are used in a prison riot. Guards often talk to inmates through the intercom system to reduce the risk of directly facing them. Every day at 7 a.m., the guards start their work. They have to thoroughly check each cell to prevent suicides or other accidents. The prisoner's data is pasted on the door of each cell, recording their crimes and information. This guy is named Vladimir and is a criminal from Siberia. Because he killed his ex-girlfriend by very cruel means, he was initially sentenced to 23 years in prison. Vladimir always insists that he has some mental problems and should not be held responsible for the crime. After filing an appeal, the 23-year sentence was changed to life imprisonment. Later, he was sent to Fire Island Prison. Fortunately, the prison's facilities are quite complete, and he can stay there without needing anything until he dies. Even after death, the prison will solve the problem of accommodation because there is a cemetery outside the cell. Fire Island Prison truly provides comprehensive service from imprisonment to death. There is a factory in Fire Island Prison where inmates who behave very well can work. This factory is dedicated to manufacturing uniforms for a private company in Moscow. The inmates earn very little, with a maximum of $900 per month. Vladimir has given it to his ex-girlfriend's mother, not because he regrets it, but because the court ordered him to compensate the victim with $5,000. For him, working in a factory is not the main goal of earning money. He wants to take advantage of this opportunity to perform well and obtain a reduced sentence for meritorious service. According to Russian law, as long as the prison term is 25 years, one can apply for parole. In theory, any serious crime committed can have the possibility of release. Vladimir is only 24 years old this year and believes that if he behaves well, the psychiatrist will assess that he has indeed repented and may be discharged early. In fact, in the prison's history, no prisoner has been released early. Some inmates have been incarcerated for 30 years. The journalist asks if it's possible for Vladimir to be released early in this life. The warden responds this way: he has to be locked up for 25 years before he can talk about that. Young people should stop thinking about getting out if they have nothing to do and live peacefully here. In Fire Island Prison, there is a strict rule for shower time. Every week, inmates only have one chance to bathe. If you want to go to the bathroom, you have to pass through heavy iron doors. Although there is no surveillance in the bathroom, the prison guards can see the situation inside through the small window in the door. Therefore, it is impossible to escape from the bathroom. Next to it is the prison infirmary, where doctors are on duty 24 hours a day. In that infirmary, there is an iron cage used to inject prisoners. Locking prisoners in here can prevent them from attacking doctors with needles. In this prison, inmates must see a psychiatrist every day, and the doctor will use various languages to make them confess the crimes they have committed. In Fire Island Prison, the 3 meals a day are soups and bread. These meals are prepared by the inmates, and only those with minor offences can work as cooks. To prevent prisoners from gathering, they must stay in their cells when eating for security reasons. When inmates leave their cells, the guards are very careful when opening the door. The inmate must look at the wall, stand with their head down, and cannot turn around until the prison guards have finished. Generally, prison guards do not enter the cells alone to avoid being attacked by the prisoners. If the guards have to go in, they must go with other guards together. If the prisoners attack the guards, they will be punished very severely, such as being locked in a small dark room for at least 15 days, and there is nothing inside that room. Prisoners can leave their cells every day and go to the yard to get some fresh air. It is said to be a yard, but in reality, it is just an open-air patio of 5 square meters surrounded by copper walls and iron walls, and the top is also covered with barbed wire. The guards patrol it. The prisoners are like caged beasts. The only thing they can do is walk back and forth in this narrow space, dazed. But this is also the moment that the prisoners look forward to the most every day. Only at this moment can they see the small sky outside and breathe fresh air. In the first 10 years of imprisonment, prisoners had only 2 opportunities to see their families each year, and each visit could not exceed 2 hours. After 10 years, 2 additional visitation opportunities are added each year. Due to the remote location of the prison, most prisoners' families generally have to take several days to get here, but can only stay for 2 hours. After a long time, most family members stopped visiting. So many prisoners have lost contact with their families. In addition, most inmates live alone, and the depressive psychology of loneliness and emptiness increases day by day, and their personalities gradually become depressed and irritable. Faced with that life day after day, prisoners are eager to leave here, and the fastest way out of here is death. For some of them, if there is no family to claim the body after death, they will be buried in the prison cemetery and cannot leave Fire Island until the time of their death. Who would have thought that this soft-looking girl would be a killer? She has been locked up in a Russian women's prison for 4 years, where she has been useful for sewing machines, feeding cows and pigs, and now these delicate hands are used to clean animal waste. Of course, participating in work is just a common means of penitentiary reform for the inmates. If they do not obey discipline, the guards beat them and then lock them in a small dark room. The punishment is no different from that of male prisoners. In a women's prison in the Ural Mountains of Russia, there are 420 inmates. Before entering the prison, each of these prisoners was notorious for home invasions, armed robbery, murder, arson, smuggling, and drug trafficking. Almost every crime is committed. Now they have become docile sheep. They have to get up at 6:30 in the morning and then do radial exercises in the cold wind at a temperature of 8 degrees. This is a regular program in the prison. As long as the prisoners can walk on the ground, they have to participate in the daily exercise for half an hour. The woman in front is the prison director. She is 42 years old and has been dealing with prisoners for more than 20 years. She says that here, the inmates don't dare think about escaping because there's no way they can get out. The entire prison is surrounded by high fences with sharp barbed wire everywhere, and the prison guards are fierce dogs that patrol several times a day to check for any damage to the fences, not to mention the high-tech surveillance that covers 360 degrees with no blind spots. The inmates are counted 2 or 3 times a day, and naturally, the female prisoners have no way to escape. Every day after morning exercise, the prisoners line up for breakfast in the dining hall, with meals including bread and cheese prepared by their cellmates. When the prisoners finish eating, the guards also check the utensils to prevent them from taking knives and forks to use as weapons. Then the inmates put on their uniforms and formed long queues directed by the guards to their respective workplaces. The prisons offer prisoners a wide variety of work options, from operating sewing machines in factories, raising pigs and feeding cows on farms, to preparing prison meals in the kitchens. To prevent weapons and drugs from being smuggled into the cells when food is transported here, prisoners can only eat bread produced in the prison. Victoria, 18 years old, works as a baker in the prison kitchen. Not to mention that she is very young, but she has already been eating bread in prison for 4 years. When the reporter asked her about her criminal experience, Victoria opened a pair of large, innocent eyes and said that her mother had just gotten a new boyfriend at that time. Due to her young age at the time of the crime, she was sentenced to 6 years in prison and sent to a juvenile detention centre, where there are a total of 200 underage female inmates. Similarly, Tatiana, 18 years old, was arrested for drug trafficking and sentenced to 3 years in prison. At the peak of her career, Tatiana earned $1,000 a month. For some of her companions, this might have been just a few meals, but most of these prisoners were born in the poorest areas of Russia, and for them, it was a lot of money. Now Tatiana has to stick with her sewing machine, but she's doing well enough to be assigned a luxurious double cell with her roommates, fully furnished with plenty of free time to embroider, paint, or learn computer skills. Although the cell is still monitored and they have no privacy, this doesn't bother Tatiana, who says that at first it was hard to accept, but she got used to it eventually. Anyway, most of the guards are women and have seen it all. This woman, Sarah, is the model prisoner of the prison. At 30 years old, she is already in prison for the 3rd time, having been sentenced to 6 years in prison for drug trafficking, and has now served only half of her sentence. Sarah is housed in the prison's 2nd section, where there are over 80 people in total, all repeat offenders like her, 50 of whom are drug criminals. Sarah, who was also a ringleader on the outside, is now reduced to working earnestly in the prison's tailoring workshop. She says that in this place, if you work hard, you can earn money. She spends her days on her feet, weaving fabrics and hating the sewing machine's smoke. Her final products, including reeds, jackets, and tailored clothing for hunters and fishermen, will be sold by the prison to a clothing company. Sarah earns about $50 a month, of which she keeps only a quarter for herself and sends most of it to her parents and her 13-year-old son. Although her current income is nothing like what she had when dealing drugs, her days are no longer as frightening as before. Now that she's in prison, she's at peace with herself, exercises in the morning punctually, and doesn't cause trouble for the prison guards. She also sports a nice haircut and actively participates in the cultural shows organised by the prison, which even the prison director appreciates. Compared to sewing machines and baking bread, working on the prison farm is obviously very hard work. The inmates have to endure the stench of the stables and pigsties, take on the heavy physical work of mixing feed, cleaning manure, milking, and raising livestock, and they are also well versed in postnatal care for sows. All the beef and pork they raise goes to military warehouses. Those who don't comply are put by the prison in a basement cell. It's narrow, dark, damp, and dilapidated, with an 8 square metre space that can hold up to 4 people at once. To prevent inmates from breaking things when they're locked up, all tables and chairs are welded to the floor, as are the beds, which can be folded when not in use. Inside, there are only 2 broken wardrobes, a sink and a toilet, but nothing else. During the punishment period, prisoners can only eat, drink, and relieve themselves inside. The prison guards said they would come to check the room from time to time, and when they encountered unruly inmates, they would sometimes punish them physically. Under these harsh measures, the prisoners had to obediently accept the reform. However, there is also a human side to the prison. Well-behaved inmates have the privilege of receiving family visits, which they can apply for once every 3 months. The prison has a special visiting area with secure dormitories where the inmate's privacy is guaranteed. Inside, there are 2 single beds, an independent kitchen and bathroom, a refrigerator, television, microwave, and electric fan. As long as the inmates don't break the rules, they can enjoy 3 days of heavenly pleasures with their families. In the vast Russian territory, there are 35 women's prisons housing more than 60,000 female inmates. Prison guards say the maximum sentence for women is 20 years for any crime, and that they receive the most basic treatment in prison. In contrast, male prisoners in Russia are not so lucky, and are often held in very precarious conditions, such as in Russia's Fire Island prison or the Black Dolphin prison, which is a real hell on earth. But why do Russian prisons treat male and female prisoners so differently? Here is the answer from the prisons. FR is Russia's most famous prison. If a prisoner dares to escape, the fierce military dogs will tear him apart immediately, or the guards will beat him on a raised platform. It is also Russia's oldest prison, having housed a total of 1 million criminals over its 200 years of existence, and it is no less dangerous than Black Dolphin Prison. The central prison of Vladimir, located 1 kilometer southeast of Moscow, was historically a harsh prison for political prisoners, and during the Cold War, it housed Stalin's son. Today, the prison houses murderers. To deter these dangerous criminals, the guards at this place are said to be the most powerful in the world, armed with AK-47s and empowered to shoot prisoners on the spot if they try to escape. Even if the prisoners managed to escape the guards' capture, they could not escape the military dogs in pursuit of interception. This prison has a group of strong, bear-like dogs, Caucasian shepherds. This is one of the fiercest canines in the world and is Russia's imperial military dog. It weighs 90 kilos, can reach 2 meters in height, and is so muscular that it can keep fighting even if hit by a .45 caliber bullet. With its fierce temperament combined with sharp teeth, any prisoner would be torn apart. In this harsh environment, killers, no matter how fierce, become docile sheep. New prisoners entering this prison face a thorough inspection by the guards. All metal, utensils, and sharp objects that can cause harm to people are confiscated. The guards are very experienced and carefully check every inch of clothing, especially the seams where it is more likely that things will get caught. Another key point of the search is the prisoner's body, where the holes are carefully checked since it is easier to hide knives or mobile phones. The prisoner in front of us was searched thoroughly. They looked for springs and batteries, and although we don't know what he used these tools for, the guards certainly didn't give him a good time. The murderers here are ruthless. There was once a prisoner who beat his mother to death with a bench because she didn't give him money to buy whiskey. Having been in contact with these people for so long, the guards have come to the consensus that only by being more ruthless than the inmates can they be subdued and ensure the safety of others. Therefore, in this prison, there have occasionally been rumours of scandals involving mistreatment of prisoners. However, when interviewed, the inmates usually remain silent, and none of them dare to mention the matter, perhaps out of fear of punishment from the guards. Despite the harsh conditions, the food here is quite good compared to other Russian prisons. Lunch consists of bread, chicken soup, and barley porridge, enough to satisfy the prisoners. The journalist asks, what is the difference between Russian prisons and those in other European and American countries? The warden replied, the prisons in those countries are more open, the food is better, and the prisoners have more contact with each other, but I don't think it's a good way to manage things. In Russian prisons, criminals are more isolated from each other. They can't share their criminal experiences, no one influences anyone else, and that makes them more afraid of prison, which helps reduce recidivism. In addition to Black Dolphin Prison and Vladimir Central Prison, there is another prison in Russia with extremely strict security. This former concentration camp is located in a freezing Siberian tundra, where most of Russia's prisons are built, 149 in total. The next one is prison number 17, located along the Great Siberian Railroad. This prison houses 10,000 inmates, and it is noteworthy that most of them are non-violent. They are all first-time offenders with light sentences of just 5 years. Compared to other prisons, the guards are not too strict, but due to the remoteness and desolate location, many inmates suffer from mental illness and even commit suicide because they cannot stand the loneliness. Siberia, which occupies more than a quarter of Russia's total land area, is usually sparsely populated, and inmates are transported by train. When new inmates arrive, they have to face the desolate landscapes of the road and the stares of other inmates, which is a horrible oppression that can make them sick psychologically. For new inmates, the initial stage is more difficult to overcome. They will experience fear, depression, and aggression. To help them better overcome the novice stage, newcomers are usually placed in solitary confinement for the first 15 days. Every morning at 6, the inmates must get up for morning exercise, enduring the freezing Siberian winds with temperatures reaching 40 degrees Celsius below zero outside. But the inmates have no choice but to endure it. Dmitry, a 24-year-old Muscovite, was arrested for drug trafficking and sentenced to 4 years in prison. He has served almost 3 years of his sentence and has not seen his family even once. But in a few days, he has to attend a hearing to defend his case for early release. And if things go well, he could go home earlier. He has been able to escape his loneliness these past few years thanks to the company of his cellmate, George. George was sentenced to 5 years in prison for drug use. The dealer and the drug addict become friends in prison, and the two encourage and help each other and get along very well, even planning to go on vacation together when they get out of prison. For the inmates here, what they look forward to most is seeing their loved ones, and the care of their families can make them feel more at ease with their rehabilitation. However, because the prison is so far away, family members have to travel by train and spend a lot of money and time to visit them, so many inmates have not seen their families in years. George is one of the most fortunate inmates since his family comes to visit him several times a year. It was visiting day when the press interview took place, and George's father arrived to visit him. If you've noticed, this father looks a bit like the president of Russia. It seems that George's identity is not simple. Just kidding. The visit lasted only 1 hour, and the next visit will be in a few months. Right after the visit ended, a siren suddenly went off outside. Motion detectors were monitoring a prison escape, and a couple of guards ran out, took up high positions, and readied their weapons, ready to shoot, but to their dismay, no prisoner had escaped, nor were there any signs of escape in the snow. It turned out that a gust of wind had caused the motion detectors to misjudge the situation, but it's easy to see that the inmates here have no chance of escaping, and certainly don't have to pay with their lives for a few years in prison. In Prison 17, inmates who behaved well were given the opportunity to work, and although the pay was only a few dollars a day, the inmates were eager to go because it would pass the boring life in prison. After all, the hardest thing to endure in prison was not physical torture, but mental torture. Inmates who disobeyed the rules were placed by the guards in a small dark room where they were not allowed to see even a ray of sunlight. Every morning after waking up, their beds are immediately locked up, and the prisoners can only look at the four walls all day long. This punishment undoubtedly places unimaginable psychological pressure on the prisoners, and even the most rebellious prisoners, once locked up here, will come out and become very obedient. On the other hand, Dimitri's parole hearing was about to begin. Nervous, he made his way to his office, even though he had a year and 4 months left of his sentence, and if things went well, he could be granted early release. The prison board asked him where he would go and what he would do when he was released. A few days later, the prison board gave its answer, and the prison director came in person to deliver it. It seems that George is happier than he is. Let's hope that both of them get out and have a good life. It's better not to go back to jail in the future. I hope you enjoyed this edition. Give us a like if you liked the video, and remember to subscribe to The Daily Astonishing.